The definitions there on page 2. Wasn't critical theory originally developed as a legal theory? And then, it gave birth to a lot of other topics like, was mentioned here, gender theory or white fragility, all these other terms that you have listed here. Wouldn't it be just sufficient just to, as sort of an umbrella concept and understanding for this, just to refer back to those original authors of the critical theory that was developed?
Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Tanner, I think that's a good point. That's why we start out with saying that that's like the umbrella through all the other ones. The problem is like I said, it's a moving target. It seems like there's a new term created every day in this realm. And so in order to try to be comprehensive, we use the common terms in that space. So that's the intent.
Very good. And of course, that was a clip with Representative Steve Tanner and Senator Taves. Sorry for that there. But the discussion continued. And so let's watch this next clip.
Has this type of concept been done anywhere else in our statutes, that we would call out a new procedure or a new issue and then ask that we go backwards and report our transgressions, if you will? Have we done that before?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Souter, I haven't studied all of our codes to know whether or not we've ever done that before, but I can give you the intent behind this one because I've worked a lot on this. The intent is to identify what has been done in the past so we don't repeat it. And I've said this, my wife actually says the only thing we learn from history is that we don't learn anything from history because we often see things repeated. I'm a little bit more of an optimist, so I say if we don't learn from history, we're destined to repeat it. So the intent of this is to avoid repeating mistakes we've already made. The original legislation that came out of the work group had a 5-year look back to see what had been done. I thought that was a little bit too much, and so we narrowed that to 2 years. It actually will show the changes that were made, so I think it'll be really interesting for this committee to look at, because you'll see the year before the 3 resolutions that came out of the Department of Education's those resolutions that came out and kind of changed things, and you'll be able to see kind of what it looks like after that. So it'll give you a before and after look.
Yeah, very good. I think it's incredible. Again, we're at this point here where it's like how important is this bill, guys? Let's see if we can bring up the legislation if you have it, because this whole part about the legislative findings and intent, we've seen this be brought up in other bills where people say, you have so much, you have all these legislative findings in this bill. This bill is 10 pages long, and the 2 pages of it are this, and it's just explaining why this legislation is necessary. So I'm going to read this because I find this fascinating. This is in section 1, legislative findings and intent. The legislature finds that this state, Idaho, was founded upon the fundamental truth that all men are created equal and endowed with inalienable rights. Among these rights is the freedom of inquiry, which, along with the principle of liberal toleration, is essential to the advancement and diffusion of knowledge. The Constitution of this state also declares that the stability of a republican form of government depends mainly upon the intelligence of the people. In contravention of these principles, a subversive ideology derived from the tenets of critical theory has infected the administration of this state's system of higher education, promoting a culture of division, ignorance, bigotry, and intolerance. Therefore, it is the intent of the legislature to eliminate all programs and initiatives within all public institutions of higher education predicated on the tenets of critical theory, or more commonly known under the title of, quote, diversity, equity, and inclusion, close quote. Folks, that is a scathing, scathing rebuke of the infestation of our higher educations by cultural Marxism. I mean, that is it right there. And that is in this, that's what people are voting on. That's what this bill is all about. It's already made its way out of the Senate. It is now being presented here in the House Education Committee this morning. It did pass out of that committee with an overwhelming vote, but incredible language there. And of course, then it goes on to define all of the different words being used throughout the language, and that basically we're just going to go back to a merit-based system. Okay, there was some great public comment on this, and we want to share. We want to highlight a couple of those here. First, I believe is this Grace from the Idaho Family Policy Center? Is that who popped up here to testify? Let's watch this. Oh no, that's because we didn't have that clip yet. But you've got it, right? You got it. All right, let's go. It's coming.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Grace Howitt, and I serve as policy analyst for Idaho Family Policy Center. We support Senate Bill 1198, and we thank the sponsors for bringing this bill forward. Diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives have taken over our educational institutions like a cancer. While the left claims that these initiatives bring us closer to equality, in reality, DEI promotes injustice by treating individuals based on uncontrollable, immutable characteristics, rather than the content of their character or their abilities. This is dehumanizing and unbiblical. In Leviticus 19:15, we are told, "You shall do no injustice in judgment. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. In righteousness you shall judge your neighbor." This biblical teaching affirms that we should reward and punish individuals based on their actions and behaviors, not on other group-based characteristics. While this verse specifically refers to differential treatment based on socioeconomic status, it should also be applied to other group identifiers like race, ethnicity, or other external characteristics that one might use to define one group as oppressed and another as oppressor. And this is why we need to stop and prevent public universities from requiring DEI courses or maintaining DEI offices. Put simply, it is wrong for these government employees to treat others differently based on group characteristics rather than merit. Idahoans agree. According to statewide public opinion polling commissioned by Idaho Family Policy Center, 72% of likely Idaho voters agreed that DEI programs have no place in state government and public education. And with that, I ask you to protect true justice by sending Senate Bill 1198 to the floor with a do pass recommendation.
Very good. And some more ammo in this argument came from a mom with a student in higher education. Listen to this. It's incredible.
Chairman and committee members, my name is Christina Hardy. I'm representing myself. I live in District 23, and I'm here to speak in favor of Bill S. 1198. My daughter is in her final semester of the ISU Dental Hygiene Program, a competitive, highly regarded program known for producing top-notch hygienists. During the Senate committee hearing for this bill, it was suggested that students at ISU aren't complaining about DEI in their classes. I asked my daughter about this, and she said that's because it's so rampant. It's just accepted as a normal part of her public education. She gave me some examples that I'll share. In her senior year required course called Community Health and Special Needs Populations, last October, an assignment required students to complete a privilege checklist, identifying their privileges based on class, race, cisgender status, sexuality, gender, and more. This doesn't foster unity. It perpetuates bias and opens wounds that never existed. twisting the positive intent of diversity, equity, inclusion. Another example is from the same class, again in the fall, where the teachers celebrated LGBTQIA+ Oral Health Week, focusing on inclusive, affirming care for that community. She shared with the class resources for a case analysis assignment that they had. And I find myself asking, what does this have to do with dental hygiene? Are teeth different based on gender identity? Clearly, the professor's agenda aligns with the DEI principles defined on page 2 of this bill, and they simply don't belong in any dental hygiene program. I realize we already have Idaho Code 33-138, which promotes dignity and non-discrimination in public education and prevents critical race theory from being promoted, but I believe we need this next step that this bill provides to stop the ideological overreach in our higher education system that the vast majority of Idahoans would welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Hardy, for your testimony. Questions, committee? Representative Mathias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hardy, would you say in those instances you just provided that your daughter felt discriminated against or uncomfortable?
Ms. Hardy.
I am not my daughter, so I don't know that I can speak to that exactly.
Good for her. I mean, why speak on her behalf? Very good. Okay. Can you believe that? Can you believe that her daughter, I just want to reflect on that. Her daughter going to be just trying to become a dental hygienist, right? And has to be inundated with talking about cisgender this and even having to understand the term. When I heard that term a couple of years ago, cis, that you're a cis, I was like, what is that? Where did that come from? And why are we using it? Like, if anybody to me, that is a derogatory term. If you call me the C word, is that even how you spell it? CIS, right? If you call me that, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to lose my mind. Anyway, I just and then her point right at the beginning here, which we did hear, is that, oh, this isn't happening. No one's complaining about being indoctrinated. It has gone so far that it's just accepted. It's part of the DNA. It's systemic, right? We all know that word, right? It's systemic. It is so in there. I remember seeing years ago. I mean, I don't know if this was 20 years ago, 15 years ago. There was a documentary called Indoctrinate You, with the letter U. It was like Indoctrinate University. I highly recommend it. It is a fantastic documentary of this guy who just kind of all of the things about what they were pushing in the leftist wings of these colleges were just like all over the place. And this documentary is fantastic. So I highly recommend you look at it. I don't know where you can find it. It was kind of one of those like bootleg things that was being sent around. But anyway, it's now systemic. It is now absolutely systemic. Two quick clips here. Representative Barbara Ehart, Representative Kyle Harris, two fantastic legislators. One, an icon of the state legislature, and another one, a rising superstar. Let's watch these clips here from Ehart and Harris.
Representative Ehart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for a couple of comments in supporting the motion. First, as was stated, I was on that committee, but I feel like I've been on this committee since 2019 when I first responded to the letter that came from Boise State with interim president Dr. Martin Shrimp as he was supposedly preparing the way for the incoming president. And as he outlined all the things here doing with DEI, I was completely taken back. Remember, I spent 15 years in higher ed, both coaching and teaching, and this had never been tenets that we had both encouraged and embraced. As a matter of fact, if those had been coaching tenets, we would have absolutely destroyed our team, because you cannot unite by dividing, and that's exactly what DEI does. A comment was made about being a white woman. I had to think for a minute. I actually had to look down, and I looked over at Representative Church. I'm like, I guess that's me. I'm the white woman. And you know what? I never benefited from that. I worked hard. I came up in an era where nothing was given to me. And I look at you, my colleagues, my my male colleagues, and I believe that when you support something I do, it's because of the work I put in, it's because of the excellence behind it, which I believe is the overriding value on which we should be judged. Excellence, because anyway, I think who wants a brain surgeon that was promoted based on DEI as opposed to excellence? My path forward, I worked hard for. And when I think about what we did in 2019, I had 28 colleagues, including leadership, sign on to that letter, including the good sponsor, basically pushing back, saying that is not how we wanted our schools to be run. And as I close, I'll say this: I have stood on the House floor every session when higher ed came up, decrying the higher ed because of the DEI. This is something I've been fighting since 2019. I'm grateful to have been on the committee. This is a great step forward. I appreciate the work of our committee and of the good gentleman, and I encourage you to support this.
This bill is just trying to get DEI back to what DEI's original intent was: diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI is no longer diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's been morphed into this ideological viewpoint of divide, exclude, and isolate, because that's all it does now. It divides groups of people, it excludes certain groups of people, and it isolates other groups of people. And in doing that, you lose the whole concept of what DEI's original goal was. This bill doesn't stop teachers from teaching. All it says is you can't force students to be required to take a DEI training course or a DEI instruction course based off of a degree that they're going down when it has nothing to do with anything regarding DEI. This bill is like many bills that happen in this building, where it gets just drawn out into the abstract world of not even having anything to do with the concept and core of the bill. These things we're doing here are clear. It's intentful. It doesn't need to be skewed into obscurity and misguided beliefs. It's plain and simple black and white English on a piece of paper that's just trying to draw things back to the original intent of what DEI always was and it was supposed to be, and makes it good again. Nobody here wants to exclude or divide anybody. We all want to be included and have an equal seat at the table. And if we follow the simple laws of this land and this state, we are all equal, period. So with that, I'll support the motion. I'm glad we're going to get some higher fines going there, and as soon as it hits the floor, it'll have a yes from me.
I'm glad it's got higher fines. Like, yeah, man, look, if we all just like look at the Constitution, look at our Bill of Rights, we're solid. That's the whole, I mean, look, folks, we have the longest standing Constitution in this country. We have the U.S. Constitution, the longest Constitution. Is this how the longest standing Constitution in the history of the world? In the history of the world. We're coming up on 250-year anniversary of our country. The Constitution was written shortly a few years after, so we're not quite there. We're not going to be quite there yet. But in all of world history, there has never been a constitutional republic ruled by a document as long as this one has been. And we are seeing with this DEI, all of this stuff. I mean, 2 years ago, we were screaming CRT. Last year, we were screaming SEL. Now we're screaming DEI. Like, all they do is change the name, but it's all the same cultural Marxist BS, right? But if we just get rid of it and we just say, let's just look to the Constitution. That, my friends, is what helped free our slaves. The slaves in this country were helped free because of the words that were written down in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Up until the Civil War, the entire world had been dealing with the scourge of slavery since the dawn of man. Okay? But the things that were laid down, we heard it earlier, it's a long, slow process. You know, these battles, they don't happen overnight. And the other side will continue to pound away and pound away and pound away. Evil doesn't take a vacation. And neither should you when it comes to our liberties. Wow. Incredible. Our quick acting producers found the poster for that documentary. The only reason I bring this up, and again, this is a independent documentary. This was done, I think, in 2007 is when it was released, and so it probably took a year or two to make. And so you're talking about watching a film, an independent film from the early 2000s. So give it a little bit of latitude when it comes to the production value on this thing, but you're going to recognize a few people in this documentary, I guarantee it. But the other thing is that this was going on 20 years ago. In fact, even longer, because it became a documentary. It was already happening, right? And this guy says, why is this happening in our institutions? And so he decided to make a documentary about it. So even by that point, this problem was a huge problem. The indoctrination that was going on in our universities. So I highly recommend checking that out. I think you could probably just Google it on YouTube at this point and find it.